on. We are now recording this meeting, and it will be posted on the NEWRA website tomorrow or the next day, so that if you want to go back and look at something, or you have a friend that would like to see it, it'll be there. And as a reminder to everyone, please be respectful to your neighbors and to our guests tonight, and allow enough time for everyone to share their opinions, share their questions, and let's have a really good open discussion. For those of you who do not know how to use the chat function, I put my cell phone number in the chat. Text me your question. What you want to do for the chat, you want to go into chat and raise your hand. We'll kind of go over that a little bit when we get closer. So let's dive into tonight's meeting. We've got a great lineup for you, but I want to give you a couple quick updates. This is an election year in Boston, and we are going to work with NEWRA. We're going to host a mayoral and at-large city council candidates nights on Zoom, so you have an opportunity to meet these candidates, learn about their positions and their vision for the city, and ask them questions. Another thing you'll be getting from us in the next few days in an email, and please look for it. It's a survey. We're working with the trustees of the reservation. So if you're on our mailing list, you will receive this. And it's a survey about open space in the neighborhood and the need for it. It's going to ask you questions about how to use parks, how you use a park. Should there be more open space and more parks to combat sea level rise? If you'd like to see Sergeant's Wharf become a park, if you want to see more open space added to the waterfront. Okay, so into tonight's meeting. One of the things that we are all grappling with is civic participation and how to make your voice heard in a respectful and constructive manner. How do you as a resident of the city and of the Commonwealth participate in the government process? How do you get to have the ability to ask questions and be heard? It's become a real concern here for many people. So when we get to the ZLC section of tonight's meeting a little bit later on, we're going to get an update from Dave Kubiak about last night's BPDA meeting on the design and use guidelines regarding the downtown waterfront, which stretches from the Hook building all the way to the Long Wharf Marriott. And one of the issues we heard post meeting, I was not on the call last night, but folks did not have a chance to speak and ask questions. So Commissioner Irish, I'm going to open your mic right now. I got to find you. Hold on one second. It should open. Thank you. We are delighted to welcome you back to NEWRA. It's been a year. We greatly appreciate the response to our February letter and you coming here to discuss the process, the ZBA process with us. I do want to let you know there have been a number of hearings in the past few months, 14 North Bennett Street, 25 Atlantic Ave, the Daily Catch, among others, where residents were not allowed to speak. There's a real concern about the process here, and because these projects directly impact people and our neighborhood. So let's welcome Commissioner Irish, who is going to take your questions after he speaks with us via the chat function. And just a reminder, NEWRA members, first, please with your questions, and everyone please be respectful to each other and to our guests. Commissioner Irish, you're up.
Well, thank you for inviting me this evening. I'm very happy to be here. I enjoyed the last time I was here. It's a very informed group, very active group. So I was happy to engage. I just want to introduce a few members of my team who are with us this evening. Chris English, Chief of Staff, is with us. Jessica Thomas, she's Assistant Commissioner of Constituent Services, and she also serves as our ZBA Ambassador. And I think you mentioned, you met earlier, Colleen Kennedy, who is our Constituent Services Liaison. Just wanted to jump back and talk a little bit about the Mayor Walsh's executive order that he issued last February to make important and significant reforms to the Zoning Board of Appeal and the process. That executive order increased the ethics requirement and transparency and training requirements for the board. Since then, we've added new members to the board. We've been working to modernize the board. As you can see, we have now online applications, payments, and we're very proud of the ZBA tracker that we recently launched. So maybe Jessica can drop that in the chat. We want folks to take advantage of that. It's a quick and easy way to search projects that are in the ZBA pipeline. You can see them on a map. You can search them by address, and you can find out where they are and what's going on with them. And we've also recently begun posting the actual written decisions on our website. So you don't no longer need to contact ISD to request records to actually read the written appeals that's now available to you from 2021 and going forward. And we've been working very hard to get through the COVID-19 backlog. As you know, I don't need to repeat. Everyone knows that we've been shut down. We're on the anniversary of COVID-19, and hearings was one of the things that was discontinued for a pause, I would say, for a period of time. And we didn't want to rush back into holding these hearings because we needed to understand how we could hold them in a way that your voices can be heard. So we've begun to reopen hearings in June on a small scale, and eventually ramped it up to where we are now, where we've caught up with a lot of the backlog that's related to COVID-19. But we're also closely monitoring the hearings, and we also are trying to make improvements as we progress to make sure that there's ample time on a very busy agenda. Unlike most cities and towns, we have huge agendas, and we don't want them to be we don't want them to be too packed, so that there isn't ample time for dialogue between the board and community members and elected officials, everyone who wants to give input before the board makes decisions. So we've been monitoring and tweaking that, and we've actually made some changes now. But it's important to note that when we do make changes, it takes probably a few months before you see them. We've made some changes to the number of things we're putting on the agenda. So beginning, I believe, April 27th, you'll see an agenda that's a little lighter than it is now. And the agendas you're seeing now are actually lighter than you saw a few months ago. And these are adjustments that we're making to make sure that the board has the time needed. Um, I'm prepared to speak specifically about the 14 North Bennett case, because that was a part of the letter of invitation. But we're certainly available to talk about other matters and just the ZBA process in general. But I want to just go over 14 North Bennett, since that was a part of the invite. Um, as you know, the board granted relief for this appeal on January 12th, 2021. And this proposal was to change the occupancy from a rectory to a multifamily residential dwelling with 6 dwelling units, and to build a 1-story addition. The board did grant relief for several violations. Article 54, Section 10, usable open space was insufficient. Also, floor area ratio was excessive. Rear yard was insufficient. The roof structure restrictions was a conditional use requirement, and also off-street parking required a variance. This project was initially proposed as a change of occupancy from a rectory to 8 residential units with a 1-story addition with rear decks and roof decks. This project was subsequently reduced to 6 units, and the proposed decks were removed. This appeal was especially initially noticed for February 25th, 2020. And at the hearing, the appellant attorney requested a deferral for additional community process. The board voted to defer the matter until April 28th, 2020. The April 28th hearing did not occur due to the pandemic. All the hearings that were scheduled for April 28th were initially deferred to June 30th. However, the matter on wasn't heard on June 30th and rescheduled again and noticed for August 25th, 2020. On August 25th, the appellant's attorney requested a deferral, stating that significant changes have been made to plans and that they were awaiting a neighborhood council meeting in September. The board voted to defer until November 10th. The matter was re-advertised for that date. On November 10th, there was then another deferral. This one was due to the notice that ISD sent out didn't reflect the changes that were made. So it was re-noticed for January 12th, 2021. And as I said in the beginning, that appeal was approved then. I know at the hearing, Neighborhood Services, and John Romano, our colleague, is here as well. And Neighborhood Services testified in support. Councilor Edwards' office deferred to the discretion of the board. There were abutters from 1 North Bennett Court and 160 Salem Street who spoke in support. Ellen Hume, I believe she's here this evening, of 21 North Bennett, was present to speak in opposition and requested that the board defer the matter because Attorney Larry DeCara was not able to be present due to an accident. Um, Mr. Fortune, the secretary, he noted on the record that there were numerous letters of support for and against this project. The BPDA did submit a recommendation for denial without prejudice. However, that was based on the original submission, which was for 8 units. Ultimately, the chair did not choose to defer, and that is totally within the discretion of the chair. If in fact she felt as though she heard enough testimony and there was no new information or reason to defer at that time. So that's pretty much the chronology, partly impacted by the pandemic, partly impacted by requests for deferral by the applicant, citing a desire to work with the community, and on one occasion due to the improper notice going out. I'll stop there and take questions.
Let's take questions. So I think we would probably want to start with some of the folks on North Bennett that were involved in that. Tom, Ellen, I'm looking for hands up. Actually, Tom, your mic is open, Tom, so why don't you go first?
Thank you. Mr. Commissioner, did you have an opportunity in reviewing the circumstances to actually review the video of the hearing that took place?
Yes, I did.
And do you recall that the opponents were not given an opportunity after Ms. Hume indicated that Larry DeCara was in a hospital? At that point, she did not waive her opportunity, but we were never given an opportunity again to speak. Were you aware of that? And can you reflect on what happens to the overall sense of the equity and fairness of the ZBA process if something as fundamental as allowing the opposition even to be heard? And did that resonate? And what that's the first one. And secondly, with the upcoming change in the termination, or not termination, the terms of office in July, there's a substantial number of the members of the board who come up for review. My second question is, what role does your office, if any, as commissioner play in making recommendations to the city council and to the mayor's office?
Thank you for your question. So the Zoning Board of Appeal is an independent body. ISD provides administrative support to the board. We do not tell the board how to make decisions. What we do is we try to control what we can, which is making sure that they're getting comments for and against projects, making sure that we are scheduling an agenda that allows for them to have thoughtful conversations. I have watched many of the hearings, and over the last year, and I do feel the board is very intent about getting feedback from all sides. Representative feedback. They don't let everyone speak, but that is within the chair's discretion to have some folks speak and to get an idea of what the reasons for opposition or support are. What we're trying to control on our end is how we can ensure that the board has enough time to allow as many people as they would like to hear from speak. With respect to upcoming end of folks' terms, that is totally a decision that will be made by the mayor. That's not a decision that we make at Inspectional Services.
I want to give an opportunity for the other.
Okay, seeing as how I'm here, I have a few questions or maybe comments that I'd just like to make for the commissioner. And appreciate him coming. But, and this really relates to all ZBA hearings, not just this particular ZBA hearings, but I think this is kind of a case study of what some of the issues are. And as you mentioned, that there were multiple deferrals asked for by the proponent. And this is an ongoing issue with the ZBA because neighbors take time off from work. They take time out of their day. They are not being compensated in any way for being there. They show up, and oftentimes when the proponent sees that there is a significant group of neighbors to oppose something, they ask for a deferral. And this often happens until the neighbors are worn down because they can't keep taking the time off from their work to come to these hearings. But for the developers and the proponents of the proposals, it is the cost of doing business for them to come multiple times. So that was true in the North Bennett Street, but it's not just North Bennett Street. It's pretty much any ZBA hearing that I've been to for a North End issue over the past few years. The second issue that was raised with this was that although the proponent always says that they're doing this for a community process. In fact, more often than not, no community process happens after that. It's just a way of prolonging things so that the neighbors will not be able to keep coming. So I think that's something that's so important for you as the ISD commissioner to be aware of. The second thing that was mentioned was that although the proponent had received multiple deferrals, when the opponent asked for a deferral based on very good cause that their attorney had been in a terrible accident, it was not granted. And so just in terms of fundamental fairness, that really seems to be such a problem. And then the third thing is that, of course, yes, it is in the discretion of the chair as to who can speak and who can't. But when you only let people who support the project speak, or when you let 10 people who support it speak and one person or two people who don't support it speak, then again, there is no fundamental fairness there. This is something that routinely happens. The proponents get to speak and their supporters get to speak first. As many people as are there to support it are always allowed to speak. And then there's usually not that much time. And in the 14 North Bennett Street, the opponents didn't get to speak at all. So in terms of fundamental fairness, that is lacking. It was lacking at 14 North Bennett Street, but we could give you additional examples of other recent hearings involving North End projects. And I imagine other neighbors would like to say something because it is just so disrespectful of the residents of this city. Thank you.
Ellen, I'm going to open your mic. Ellen Hume. I know you wanted to speak.
Thank you. Thank you so much, everyone, and especially Commissioner Irish and your team for coming. It implies that you care about this. I sincerely hope that's true because the system is broken and what happened to us at 14 North Bennett is a scandal. There's something wrong. So I won't take much time, but I wanted to make 3 quick points. One, we spent over a year doing the community process. We got every vote against this project in both Nunnik and NEWRA. There were no votes in favor of it. And in fact, their new design was also rejected because there are good reasons for that, which I won't go into here. They did not want to hear that. So the idea that they changed the project to make it okay with the community is a complete falsehood. Secondly, when I was asking for the delay, I was never allowed to speak again. No one who was registered, Tom Schiavone or myself, was ever allowed to speak again. And your process, sir, is one in which we can't even raise our hand. We can't even be seen on Zoom like this. So it was the most heartbreaking, infuriating project for us after spending a year on this with the community process in place. And we were not heard, we were not respected. And so I have to say, we are not done with this. This is a very serious problem at the ZBA. It is not reformed. It is not fixed. And finally, I would like to say that we would like to work with you to make it better. We in the North End are a constructive, positive community. We want to have developments that work. We did not oppose all developments in this building. We are 32 condos directly facing North Bennett. The fact that the developer refused to work with us for a year should have been material to the decisions. But let's go forward with a better process. This is our call to you to help us. You said you don't have control over this independent board. Then help us figure out who does. We need you to help us because something's going really wrong here. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Commissioner?
No, I said thank you.
Oh, no, I'm just wondering if you, I mean, Ellen and Mary, they raised some interesting points. Is there a way for the community to work with you and the ZBA?
Well, yeah, I mean, actually, this is a part of you working with us right now, giving us this feedback. I'm taking notes. We need to take a look to see how we can address the fact that folks aren't visible in the hearings. We certainly
That's very
relay
easy.
information that.
That's because you're using a webinar format, not like this format where you can see all the names. I mean, there's all different ways to, hold a Zoom call. I think you guys use WebEx in the city. But what is the criteria that allows someone to speak? Because we've heard it, and you'll hear from some other folks too that have been at ZBA hearings where they just weren't allowed to speak at all. And they were told, I know Jen Crampton wants to talk about what happened over at 25 Atlantic in the Daily Catch, but there were all kinds of letters they were told, but they've never seen them. But what is the criteria? How does the ZBA make a decision as to who gets to speak?
That's the decision of the chair. But I can tell you,
criteria?
So
what's the criteria that they use to determine who they must have some type of criteria.
Yeah, no, and I'm trying to answer.
Oh, sorry.
And I'm going on just from my experience ever since I've been back at ISD in June 2019. I've watched as many hearings as I can. I've watched hundreds of hours, and I do see that the chair is intentional about asking for folks to speak who are for a project and against a project. Certainly, Jessica could also speak to that because she's on every single hearing all day on Tuesdays, and she actually is the one unmuting people and allowing them to speak. So I think the chair does ask for folks to speak for and against. Now, if there are 20 people who want to speak for a project, she's not going to allow 20 people to speak for, nor would she allow 20 people to speak against. But it's totally at the discretion of the chair.
But is it equitable? So that if 5 people speak in favor of a project, 5 people get to speak that are not in favor of it. Now, I'll let.
From my observation, I believe that the chair actively asks folks who want to speak if they have a different point that they want to make that was already previously made. If they're making the same point and it's going to be repetitive, then in those cases, I've seen the chair not allow someone to speak.
Jen?
Hi, Commissioner Irish and your staff, thank you for joining the meeting. We appreciate that you're here and you're listening. As Cheryl mentioned, I wanted to talk about 25 Atlantic. It kind of follows on the same themes that have come up on 14 North Bennett. We had kind of the same stuff go on with the Daily Catch a little while back, but 25 Atlantic's fresh, so let's focus on that. There were many of us, some of whom are on this call, a large number of people sat on that hearing for 3 hours on a work morning, waiting to speak, and all registered as, opposition. There was obviously supporters there too. And it really, I guess, maybe helped me understand and help this group understand what the point is of ZBA. If really it feels like the fix is in before the meeting has started and the vote's already decided, they kind of feel like they have to listen to you. because you're there as opposition, and it really felt like the fix was in. So let me just give you a quick rundown. So we sat around, waited for 3 hours. Eventually the hearing came up, and the developer, of course, was allowed to make his presentation. The developer is on the screen. His whole crew is on the screen. Nobody from the opposition is on the screen, except maybe our lawyer, got to be on, but really nobody gets to be seen except for the developer. It's really hard to communicate on WebEx. It's hard to raise your hand. It's hard to get acknowledged for raising your hand. And I will say, I don't envy the staff's position in having to deal with all of that, because I know it's probably not easy. But we had set up with the liaison ahead of time, a plan for a very limited number of people to speak. The supporters were allowed to speak at their leisure, say what they wanted. The opposition's turn came up to speak, and we were cut off very quickly. We had hundreds of letters in support. I know there were some letters in opposition. There was also some letters in support. We had 7 local elected officials who came to speak in opposition, including our representative and our senator. And when it came time for the vote, kind of magically, all of that was ignored. So it's hard to really understand the purpose of ZBA and kind of like what the point of the whole process is if they just rubber stamp everything. And, it's not clear that the board is an impartial group of people when you have the head of the Carpenters Union as one of the ZBA board members. And, they're voting for construction projects. So that's kind of odd. But anyways, just wanted to kind of get your take on that and let you know that several of these projects in recent months have gone the same way, and where the opposition is really not allowed to speak and are cut off fairly quickly. And it just doesn't feel like a fair process or an open process, especially, with the unfortunate virtual situation that we have due to COVID. So love to hear what you have to say about that.
Yeah. The purpose of the ZBA is to get input from all sides and to make decisions on variances that are requested in conditional use permits. Now, with respect to the makeup of the board, that's something that Mayor Walsh has signed on to a home rule petition that is still in progress at the State House to make some changes to how the board is structured and what organizations are able to put folks on the board. So that is something that could possibly be changed in the future. In terms of, it concerns me that folks have to wait 3 hours and feel like you're not being heard. The platform seems to be an issue, or the way that we're using the platform. We need to also take a look at how we're scheduling. I think we need to maybe schedule a little differently so folks don't have to wait for so many hours before you're actually being heard. And then I think, from what we can control is our communication with the board and our recommendations to the board, as well as our scheduling of the day to facilitate less waiting, more conversation, because we want everyone to be heard and to feel heard. We can't control what the ultimate decisions are. I think we have a very good board. We've added a lot of folks recently, and they're all good quality individuals. We're doing trainings, we're giving them recommendations and information, and we want them to, they're certainly getting all the information that you send our way in terms of letters of support and against. And, so we want to create the environment that they can be thoughtful and listen to all parties and then make decisions.
I just have a quick follow-up also on letters of support, or when people are speaking at the meeting. I know it's hard for them to verify, obviously, when people are speaking on a virtual meeting, whether someone is actually in a butter. But I think some of what we saw in 25 Atlantic was people who were not abutters or possibly didn't even live in the city of Boston were being heard, where direct abutters were not heard. And also for letters that the board receives, I know you mentioned that you provide administrative support for the board. When letters are received, are they vetted to determine whether they are from abutters or not? And how is that taken into consideration? And what is defined as an abutter, I might also ask.
Yeah, when letters are received, we're not vetting them. We're providing all the letters that we receive to the board for or against the project. In terms of what happens during a hearing, the board is pretty consistent of asking folks to state their name and address before they're allowed to make comments for or against the project.
I think something needs to be done as far as the letters go, because when we say, when it's stated how many letters of support, if you don't know where they're coming from, it shouldn't be taken, like if the chair is giving them a lot of consideration for, X number of letters in support, X number in opposition. If there is no verification of where those letters are from, it doesn't seem like it's a valid data point in making a decision that really can impact a lot of people in the community.
Can those letters be posted online?
You have to submit a FOIA request to get them.
Really?
Yep.
I'm just wondering, I'm just kind of throwing it out there, Commissioner. Maybe it's something you
I'm
can
going to
look
mute
at.
myself now. I'm done. Thank you so much.
I'm just wondering if that's something you can look at, maybe just posting the letters. They're public letters. Just post them to the website, let people look at them. Just a thought. I know, Victor, I just unmuted you. I know you wanted to speak. Victor, are you muted again? You are. Hold on. I unmuted you, Victor. Victor, you need to click through. Well, while you do that, I'm going to unmute Dave. Dave Kubiak, I'm unmuting you. Well, Victor, we figure out Victor's technical problem. There you go, Victor.
How about now?
We can hear you. Go right ahead.
Okay. Commissioner, thanks for being here and thanks for exposing yourself to some tough questions. Let me take a slightly different.
Victor, get closer to the mic.
Okay. Let me take a slightly different approach to the 14 North Bennett Street problem, because I was able to watch what happened at the ZBA that day over a long period of time, because there was something earlier in the morning that I was interested in. So what happened, what I observed was that the chair was very, very careful and very diligent at the beginning to give everyone, the proponent, time to speak, the persons appearing in support, time to speak, the ONS time to speak. But as time went on, I have a note that I'm looking at along the way, she began to speed things up. At one point, she mentioned having to finish by 4:30. It was 4 o'clock when 14 North Bennett Street was reached. And by that time, apparently, there was no time to, or little time to finish, because all the chair permitted, as we've heard before, was testimony in support. And following that, the chair moved directly to requesting a motion. And what followed naturally was a motion to support, because nothing in opposition had been heard. I think now let me try to make a suggestion for correction. And that is, there are simply too many items on a ZBA agenda. I counted one that had 57 items. Why is that necessary? Why cannot more hearings be held? One thing I observed from the website is that and this is kind of getting into the weeds, but nevertheless, I think it's important that the members get paid a per diem of $200 with a maximum of $24,000 a year, unless it's been updated. So that would mean 12 months in a year, that's $2,000 a month can be spent or can be received by a member. That at $200 per diem means a possibility of 10 hearings a week. Why isn't that taken advantage of? Why don't we simply have more hearings at which more testimony, including testimony in opposition, can be heard?
So, thanks, Victor. I agree. 57 matters on the agenda is too many, and we've already changed that, and we've even changed it further than that. So in a few months, you will see even lighter agendas. and sorry. So also, we did have a weekly hearings at one point. However, there is quite a bit of administrative work that needs to happen weeks out before a hearing to ensure that we're notifying all the appropriate folks, we're doing the necessary advertising. So at this point in time, I don't think adding weekly hearings is the answer. I think I think we're at a good pace where we've caught up with a backlog. I think we're certainly able to lessen the agenda so that there is more time and we're not running up against 4:30 with a board that's been sitting all day long.
Well, I hope so.
Yeah, I mean, this past Tuesday, the hearings ended at 2. Now, there were several deferrals, but I think we're getting closer to what we'd like to see in terms of the length of time it takes to hear hearings and the number of things that are on the agenda.
Okay, thank you for moving in that direction.
Thank you, but great questions, great points.
Cheryl, am I
I think
next?
you're on mute.
Cheryl?
Cheryl, you're on mute.
Sorry, guys. Yes, Dave. Dave up's next, and then
Next,
Catherine.
Dave Kubiak, Cleveland Place, 36-year resident of the North End. Commissioner, thank you very much for accepting NEWRA's invitation so quickly. Thank you for being here tonight and listening. And I also want to thank you for your performance last night during the Zoning 101 class that was held. Great class. And it was clear to me from what you were saying during that you really do care about public process and you care about transparency. Unfortunately, while you have control over the building permit process and the appeal process, you don't have control over the hearing process. I wish you did. I wish someone like you were running the Zoning Board of Appeal, were chair of the Zoning Board of Appeal. I think that we'd be a lot better off, but you're not. And Cheryl was asking about the criteria or standards that the board must use or the chair of the board must use. My understanding from what I learned last night from you is that all of that is in the Enabling Act. The Zoning Enabling Act defines a lot of things, but it also leaves out a lot of things, including the performance of the hearings. A lot of discretion goes to the chair of the hearing. So the complaints that we're raising tonight probably should be raised to the chair. The chair, which should be sitting in the seat that you're sitting in now, Commissioner. I'm so happy you're here and you're great. But I think if we're going to get any kind of action with respect to how the hearings are conducted, it's going to have to come from one of two people, the chair of the board or the mayor. Last night, you identified 3 boards that are independent boards, independent of city departments. The BPDA board, the ZBA, and I believe maybe the third one was the zoning commission, I'm not sure. But my understanding is that the board members on all of those boards are appointed by the mayor. So we need to direct these concerns to the mayor and to the chair of the zoning board. I hope that you, Commissioner, can carry these concerns and questions to them. That's the only way we're going to get any kind of action. I also hope that our elected officials and their aides listening tonight can also carry these concerns to the mayor and to the board to the extent that they can carry these things to the ZBA. So that's one issue. The other was raised by Jen Crampton, where she pointed out that she was asking about letters being submitted. Now, my understanding is that it's pretty strict as to what the ZBA can consider, and yet you said something tonight that opened it way up. I mean, yes, abutters are notified so that they can submit testimony. I know that elected officials, especially city councilors, can submit testimony. And there's also community organizations. And in the North End, the community organizations are the Residents Association and the Neighborhood Council. And your process and ONS's, Mayor's Office of Neighborhood Services processes, work very well in notifying those folks. But I don't understand why the ZBA should be considering any other comments equally that come in from who knows where. It just doesn't make sense to me. The elected officials, the community organizations, and the abutters should carry the most weight. And yet we go to these hearings and it's almost like they put all the letters of support on one scale and all the letters of opposition on the other, and then determine what, regardless of who sent those letters. And by the way, this is the way the BPDA board works as well. The BPDA just counts the number of letters. And in fact, even when there's a lot of letters, many more letters in opposition, they still put more weight on the letters of support. I'm starting to get the sense that the ZBA puts more weight on the letters of support than the letters of opposition, regardless of who's sending in those letters of support. So can you speak to whether or not there are clear requirements for the board to be considering its decisions based on which testimony that's coming in? Anybody's testimony from anywhere? If 100 construction trade workers send in comments, will all of those letters, each of those letters, carry the same weight as an abutter to the project? Thank you.
Yeah, in my opinion, I seriously doubt that the board would give the same weight to a letter of support or against from someone who, let's say, doesn't even live in the city of Boston, as opposed to an abutter. I would, I think more of the board than that. I think the board, and you can tell from the hearings that they're very adamant about understanding where folks reside before they testify, so that they can understand how the impact, is this person actually in a abutter or not. I understand that folks aren't happy with how that hearing and they are also the North Bennett and the Atlantic Ave hearing, and maybe perhaps some others, and there's probably some things that there are definitely things that we need to do as a department that supports the board to assist them, because they have had a very long year trying to catch up on the backlog, having long agendas. And so we're trying to address that on our end. But I think when you watch the videos of all the hearings, the board is very thoughtful. The board is getting it from all directions. They're getting it from folks who they're denying projects for, and vice versa. But when you listen to the questions and the comments, I think more often rather than not, the board is really listening to all the input and asking important questions before making decisions.
Go into reactions here.
You're on mute.
Sorry, I
David.
try to be so careful not to make a lot of noise. Kathy, your mic is open.
Okay, hi, thank you, Cheryl. Thank you, Commissioner. My name's Kathy McDonald. I am a resident, a direct abutter to the 25 Atlantic Avenue project that Jen Crampton spoke about just a while ago. I want to refer back to that because I took notes from that meeting. The chair allowed 4 people to speak in support of the project. And as also was mentioned, abutters should be given more say. Anyway, the 4 people who were allowed to speak in support of the 25 Atlantic Avenue project, they each gave their name and gave their address. The first one was Ryle Rhodes. He gave 1252 Mass Ave as his address. I am pretty sure that everyone on that ZBA board knew that 1252 Mass Ave is the Carpenters Local Union 327. They all knew that this man did not live in the North End. They all knew that this man was not an abutter, and yet they let him speak. No one shut him down. The second person who spoke, there was a second and third person who spoke. They were both North End, they gave North End addresses, but neither of them were abutters. And since they gave their address and I know their address, likewise, the ZBA members knew. The fourth person who was allowed to speak in support gave a business address, which also is in the North End, but is not an abutter. The woman who spoke actually is not even a Boston resident. She lives in Lynnfield, Massachusetts. Those four people were allowed to speak, were not cut off. When it came to the opposition's turn, our attorney was cut off, and the chair went straight to let one person speak, and then that person was cut off. No one else from the opposition was allowed to speak. We were giving our address, we were all direct abutters who were ready to speak, but the chair would not listen to us. She listened to those four people who gave their addresses, and they were clearly letting everyone know that they were not abutters. You need to be aware of that. Thank you.
Thank you.
So is there anything we can do about people speaking who aren't abutters or don't even live in the city?
We'll look into that. I'd have to look into that before answering your question, because there may, folks who work in the city may be able to speak, but we'll confirm that, and we'll certainly bring this to the attention of the chair.
That would be great. All right, we're getting down on time, so let me get a couple people who haven't had a chance to speak. Jessica, I'm muting you. I know, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I just wanted to add real quickly. So I'm the ZBA ambassador, and a lot of times, every time when people raise their hand or they're calling in, there are people who call in who we don't know their name, their names or their addresses, and we don't know if they're actually even there to speak in support or opposition. So I know when I'm, when the Madam Chair directs me to start to unmute people, I just want to make it clear that we don't know who, who's on the call, what their addresses are, or if they're on for support or opposition. And I think this is why the ZBA, they're pushing for written testimony. I think that they do understand that, not everyone, and they mentioned that, we talk about that in the beginning of the hearing, that we can't guarantee that everyone will be able to speak. It just wouldn't be fair. And I know that even when they were meeting in person, if there were several people, when people were able to come to City Hall for the hearings, if several people were there to speak, the chair would only ask for maybe the first 5 people in support or first 5 people in opposition, for example. But I just wanted to make it clear that when we are, going through the chat and we're going through people whose hands are raised, we actually don't know who's there to speak in support or opposition or where they're from. Like I said, I know that the chair will make an attempt to make sure, she'll say, please make sure it's the abutters that are raising their hand. But again, we don't know until they raise their hand. And like I said,
maybe that's something that we can, we can help work on with you. I mean, when you were talking about, all working together, I think Ellen brought it up. Maybe that's something that we can work on with you, to put a process in place where the people who do speak actually live here.
And sometimes they'll send me messages as I'm going through and then we'll say, I know that's why I knew to call on Ellen. She had spoke to me before the hearing. She sent written testimony prior to the hearing. And I just also want to make it clear too that, written testimony is, holds just as much weight. They are sent to the board. I don't know if there are people on the call who may feel like they have to be on the call if they, in addition to sending written testimony, but, we want to be respectful of everyone's time as well. And they do take the testimony and take the written testimony as well into consideration. So again, just wanted to make that clear, but we're here to help. We really do. We want to make this for everyone. Yeah, for sure.
All right, Sherry, I'm going to open your mic. We got to move. Sherry and then Eileen and Richard Jacobs. Quick. Sherry.
Thank you. Thank you. My name is Sherry Moore, and I'm an abutter to the 25 Atlantic Avenue project. Commissioner Irish, thank you so much for meeting with us tonight regarding the fair functioning of ZBA, and especially I appreciate your playback of what you're hearing us say. I would like to ask you to comment on an issue regarding how the ZBA is functioning that was raised in the letter that NEWRA wrote that you responded to, and I heard it again tonight. And that is that there seems to be conflicts of interest with more than a few ZBA members. And if in fact the board is weighted with pro-development members, then no matter how much the board lets us speak, they will vote in favor of development anyway. So could you please speak to how the board members are selected, and where is this information about the board members publicly available?
Actually, that is something that's statutory.
Yes, it is statutory. Chris, do you want to take that one, please? Chris English?
Chris,
Can you
unmute
unmute
your
Chris
mic.
English? Yes.
I just did.
I unmuted here. Can you hear me?
Unmuted. We can
Yep,
hear
we can hear you.
So yes, all of the seats on the board are statutorily described in the enabling legislation of the Board of Appeal. So there are 7 full member seats, 7 alternate member seats. So it's 1 member, 1 alternate in each of the categories, which I can read them out to you if you want. But generally, so there are representatives from the Building Trades Council, the Building Trades Employers Association, the Boston Society of Architects, the Greater Boston Real Estate Board. Each of those 4 groups submit up to 3 names as nominees to the mayor for selection to appointment. The other 3 seats, so aside from those trade group seats, there are 2 that are selected at large by the mayor who represent neighborhood organizations. And there's 1 that is just simply selected at large by the mayor. So that all of those, once selected, those names are submitted to the city council as appointees, and then they're confirmed by the city council before they become a member.
Could you post that? Is there a link for all
Sure.
that information? That'd be great. Just put it in the chat. That'd be great. Thank you. Eileen and Richard Jacobs, I'm unmuting you. And that's gonna have to be it.
It's gonna be.
Eileen, you have to, okay, quickly,
Okay,
okay? Because we're running way over.
okay. Again, thank you, Commissioner Irish. I really appreciate you being here. There was one thing, I'm in a butter directly across the street from 25 Atlantic, and I was the only person that was recognized as an abutter and able to speak. I just want to clarify that the fact that I was an abutter was known, because I was asked when I logged into the meeting at 8 o'clock in the morning. I said I would like to speak and that I was a direct abutter. So they knew that. And I probably didn't get 5 words out of my mouth before I was cut off. So I was the person that was cut off. I've lived there for 22 years. And as I understand it, based on what the chair said, the height of the building of 25 Atlantic was not in question, she said. She said, the height of the building is not an issue. Well, that's what 5418 is. It's about the height of the building. And I just didn't feel that, having not heard from the abutters what that height of building would do to our light, our views, the airflow, that we didn't get a fair hearing. And I know the hearing is over, but it was very upsetting for all of us abutters who were there to hear the chair say that the height of the building was not an issue. And I want to know whether you think the 5418 is an issue regarding the height of a building, where it's replacing a building that was 1.5 stories high, and this new one could be 55 feet, 5 stories high, plus a large roof structure. Thank you.
Thanks for your question. honestly, without looking specifically at this project, and I also want to take a look at the hearing. I don't want to comment at this time, but I do hear you. I do hear everyone. I think there's definitely work for us to do, and I do have some ideas. So we'll be discussing this tomorrow and seeing how we can improve the Board of Appeal process going forward.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Mary, your hand is up. And Tom, do you guys want to close this out?
Well, I just wanted to ask Chris English to clarify, because it's my understanding that there is a proposal that is pending, and I'm not sure if it was the home rule proposal that was referred to earlier, but that will change the composition of the ZBA. And I would like that to be clarified, please.
Yes, well, Chris is unmuting. There is a home rule petition pending that will add additional seats to the Board of Appeal from an environmental. Chris is not able to unmute, by the way.
I'm going to do it right now. Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah. There you go.
Sorry about that. There is a home rule petition currently pending with the legislature that would add 2 additional full-time member seats and 2 additional alternate member seats to the current structure of the board. These would be for a person who is an urban planner or has an urban planning background, as well as a person who has an environmental conservation background. That's currently with the legislature. So until that is acted on by the State House, the board will remain the same as it is now.
I think that's all. Well, thank you very much, Commissioner, for coming in tonight. We really appreciate your time. And Chris English, Jessica Thomas, Colleen Kennedy, thank you very much for coming and talking to us and answering our questions. Let us know how we can help. I'm sure there's a lot of people here who would love to work with you and on some of the issues that were raised tonight. That would be terrific.
Yeah, thanks again for having us. It was very helpful to hear your thoughts. I can feel the frustration, and it just motivates us to go to work and see how we can address this. So wish you all a good rest of the evening.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, Dan, I am going to open up your mic. Dan Mueller from the MBTA. He's going to talk to us about the schedule updates. There have been reductions in frequency for buses and subway systems beginning, actually will be beginning on March 14th. Commuter rail scheduling, their changes begin on the 5th. So Dan, please take it away.
Great, thank you so much. Is it possible for me to share my screen?
Yes, you have slides.
I do. If not, like, no worries.
You can, I have to be honest, I am not a big fan of slides, but okay, you can share them. Go ahead.
Okay.
And I'm going to put up your website in the chat if anybody wants to see it. I've got the link.
Yeah, and if you prefer me just to
No,
talk,
go ahead. Just if you can walk through them, that would be great.
Great, thank you. All right, so thank you for having us back. I think we were here back in November or December, and now we're back to give another update about the spring changes. So back on December 14th, the FMCB approved these changes, and as Cheryl mentioned, a lot of them are going into effect on the 14th of this month. So that's this coming Sunday, actually.
Oh, I guess I get it.
And as we mentioned last time, Fortune Head is an iterative process. So that means we're going to be continuously monitoring these changes and adjusting them as we need to. So we also received some federal funding in the last stimulus that was passed a few months ago. That was used to restore some of the changes that were approved in December. And then we are continuously monitoring the crowding and the demand for our services. And we will be able to add back service as demand increases. And then the bus and commuter rail networks are already undergoing transformation processes. So the service that we add back to those will hopefully be better than the service that we had pre-pandemic. You may have seen this graph before, but this just shows how much our ridership dropped off. You know, compared to pre-COVID levels, we're at about 40% on the bus and blue line, then less than that on the green, orange, and red lines, and then the commuter rail and the ferry are down at around 10%. So this just kind of illustrates how ridership patterns have changed. Ridership has been most steady on the bus. It decreased the least and has come back the most. In general, ridership has been the highest on routes that serve essential trips. So those are, essential workers and people going to the hospital, things like that. Minority and low-income communities, areas with geographic barriers like Boston Harbor. So that would be the blue line. That's one of the reasons why ridership has remained a little steadier on the blue line. And then communities with fewer residents who can work from home. And then ridership has been lowest on routes that primarily serve work commuters, so the commuter rail, and then communities with more residents who can work from home, and communities with more access to vehicles or other modes of transportation. So as you all know, we got some federal funds a few months ago. A lot of that money is going to be used to cover operating expenses so that we can put money back into the capital budget. About 179 million actually will be used to replace funds that we borrowed from the capital budget. Then some will also be used to restore service. So getting into the specific changes, changes in the north end, the Route 93 will see decreased frequency during the day, but the routes 4, 92, and 111 will not change. The green and orange lines will see about a 20% reduction in service, and the blue line will see about a 5% reduction in service. And I'll get into what those numbers actually mean in a little bit. And if you're interested in any other routes, please just let me know and I'll get back to you with the specifics. So getting into the changes on the subway, as I mentioned, frequency on green line, orange line, red line will be reduced by about 20%. So that means the red line goes from every 9 to 11 minutes on the branches and every 4.5 to 5.5 on the trunk. And then the orange line goes from about every 7 to every 8 minutes in the peaks, every 9 to every 11 minutes in midday. And green depends on the branch, but generally from about every 6 to 8 to every 7 to 10 during the peaks, and then midday every 7 to 8 to every 9 to 10 minutes. Because we've seen the most resilient ridership on the blue line, and we have seen a little bit of crowding there, we're only planning on reducing blue line frequency by about 5%. So that'll be every 5 to every 5.5 minutes during peaks, and then every 9.5 to every 10 minutes during off-peak times. I will put all this in the chat, but you can visit mbta.com/schedule/subway to view the upcoming subway schedules. Moving on to bus. I didn't include specific route changes here because there are a lot of them. If you are interested in specific bus changes outside of the ones that I highlighted in the north end, you can go to the website or you can ask me personally. I'd be more than happy to give you that information. But generally, we're not changing the hours of operation. We are suspending 20 routes, consolidating 16, shortening 4. And then a few routes will operate peak only. And then a lot of those changes are already in effect because of the COVID schedules that took effect last spring. And then in general, across the system, there will be a 20% reduction in frequency on non-essential routes and 5% reduction in frequency on essential routes. And these changes will take effect this Sunday. And then for the commuter rail, A lot of the changes already took effect in January. So that was the termination or suspension of weekend service on some of the lines. Then additional changes are taking effect April 5th. And as part of these changes, the MBTA is moving towards more of a regional rail. That's kind of the term we're using, but a model that prioritizes clock face service at regular intervals during the day. We've seen that the peaks have disappeared, so there's not as much of a morning and afternoon rush hour anymore. Trips are much more spread out during the day, and we're going to try to serve that distribution of trips as best we can. So in general, there'll be fewer trains in the morning and the afternoon, or at least in the morning and afternoon rush hours, and then more trains sort of in the middle of the day and spread out throughout the day. This is an increase in service from the current emergency schedule. And there should be, in general, more trains than we have now, only 11% fewer trains than pre-COVID, although those will be spread out, throughout the day. So in terms of next steps, as I mentioned, March 14th, a lot of these schedules are taking effect, specifically the ones on the bus and the subway. Then some ride changes will also be implemented. If you have questions about the ride changes, please also reach out to me. I'm more than happy to get into the details of those. Then on April 5th, commuter rail schedules are taking effect. And basically throughout this whole period of time, March through May, we are constantly reviewing our ridership, crowding, the feedback that we're getting from you all. Then we're using this to recommend how to add back service for the summer and the fall. So I'll wrap it up with that. Thank you again for having me here. We really appreciate it. I'll put all this info in the chat, but please feel free to reach out to me or any of my colleagues with questions that you may have.
Let's see if anybody has any questions. Does anybody have a question? Put up your hands, put it in the chat, open your mic. We got a couple of minutes. Has the reduced ridership enabled faster completion of work on the Green Line or the commuter rail lines?
It has actually. In general, we've taken this opportunity to accelerate a lot of our capital projects. We shut down the Blue Line for a couple of weeks, and we're able to get a lot of updates done there that would have taken much longer. We're actually shutting down the Fitchburg commuter rail line during March and April to get some positive train control work done there that would otherwise take almost a year to complete. I believe the Green Line transformation projects has also been accelerated because of COVID. So nobody wanted to see this, but I guess there was a few silver linings in terms of accelerating some capital improvement projects.
I'm sure. Anybody else have any more questions? No? I'll give it one more second. Put your hand up, put it in the chat. Well, we really appreciate you coming in tonight. Wait, we do have one from Dave Kubiak. COVID is still here. One way to protect public health and safety is to enforce bus schedules, the 111 bus especially.
For sure, and thank you for that feedback. We know that some of our bus routes actually have very resilient ridership, the 111 being one of them. So we're not going to be changing that schedule at all, really. I'm not sure. There's some bus lines where we're actually adding a little bit of service compared to pre-COVID to make sure that crowding is not a factor. But in general, we definitely agree with that, and in the 111 should be operating at pretty regular intervals.
Want to just tell us, some of us don't know what the 111 is. Where is that route?
Yeah, that's the one that goes from downtown up to Chelsea, I believe. Although I'll double check and get back to you. I know it's a very high ridership route.
That's great. Another question, any thought to bringing back the ferries for the summer?
So I can't give a definitive answer for that. If the demand returns and we have the resources, I'm optimistic. We were able to preserve weekday service on the Hingham Hall ferry. I know that the Charlestown ferry has been suspended, which is probably what you're talking about. But I'm optimistic, but we'll have to wait and see in terms of demand and resources.
Okay. Anybody else? Nope. I think we're good. Well, hopefully, you know, they passed that bill. Maybe there's money in there to bring back some service and some of the ferries too.
For sure. We're hopeful that we'll be able to use some of that.
I hope so. Well, they passed it today. He signed it this afternoon. So hopefully things will get better soon. Thank you very much, Dan. We really appreciate your coming, and hopefully you'll be back soon to tell us that everything is back to normal.
Perfect. Yeah. Hopefully I'll have better news next time.
I hope so too. You take care. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. And now we are going to welcome, hold on, I'm going to open your mic, Jesse. As some of you may or may not know, Jesse Brackenberry is leaving the Greenway Conservancy. He is headed to New York to become the CEO of the Statue of Liberty Ellis Island Foundation. And it sounds quite fascinating and very exciting. Jesse, we're very sorry to see you go, and thank you for everything you've done to bring the Greenway to life in our neighborhood and all the way down to South Station.
Well, thank you, Cheryl. And first, I just want to say thanks to John from the mayor's office, and Karen from Councilor Asabi George's office, and Michael from Councilor Edwards' office. You know, we are a public-private partnership and don't achieve these successes without good relationships with all of our elected and government officials. So thanks for your help. And thanks also to NEWRA for a longstanding partnership. You know, Kirsten has been a great addition to the board. Thank you. And Robin, a great board member before her. And also you know, I see Daniel Toscano, a former board member here, and I know Matt Conti is in the audience, and Matt is on our board now. And we also have Connor Finley and Carmine Reno, both on our board. So lots of current and former board members around the North End. Hopefully you all know Rachel Lake from our team, who is at most of these meetings. So there's always somebody to find if you've got a question or a concern or anything. I wanted to share a couple of slides if I could. I don't know if, oh good, it looks like it will let me do that.
Yeah, it's open.
Great, thank you. And I actually just need to present it and get all these menus out of the way so that I can find my way to that. There, hopefully that's visible.
Yes, we can see it.
Yeah, you know, I started at the Greenway Conservancy 11 years ago, not long after the park had opened and the Conservancy had taken operation. And that was a challenging time. That was in the midst of the Great Recession. The park had opened within weeks of the Lehman Brothers meltdown. The Big Dig was a big challenge for so many people, and the park had little twigs for trees. And you know, I think there was a lot of unfamiliarity with the public-private partnership model, and it was a challenging beginning, but I have really enjoyed my time working on the park. I moved to Boston with one kid who was then 1 year old, and a year later we had twins. And so for the 11 years that I've been here, my kids are now 12, 10, and 10, and have grown up with the park. And it's been really fun working on it. And I think the relationship in the North End has gotten quite strong over the years. And some of the things that I'm proud to have accomplished together include the boxwood beds, which, you know, I've been leading the Greenway Conservancy since 2013, and through a process in 2013 and 2014 of talking to and listening to the community, prioritizing the improvement to the boxwood beds that hadn't been planted right originally and had been deteriorating since day one. This is a photo from Matt Conti's of those boxwood beds afterwards, which we approved in 2015. And I'm really so glad that a project like that, paired also with adding the swinging benches that are on the pergola, came directly out of meetings like this. We co-hosted listening sessions with both NEWRA and NEWNIC in those early years, and they led to these kind of improvements. It also, you know, some of the early efforts to bring programs and activities to the North End parks weren't as successful as I think they are now. And, you know, we have in a non-pandemic time, and this is obviously a non-pandemic picture, we've got 400 plus free events, and we do different things in different places, and that really is to be reflective of the communities that are there and the spaces and what they permit. And so, you know, these lawns, which are so wonderfully used during the summer for just sunbathing and for families with their kids going in the fountain, you know, we I think have found the right balance together with you on how to have things like this fitness class, but also how to really have great passive use happening most of the time. The North End lawns are probably the most consistently used day in, day out element of the park. And sometimes things in the middle of those lawns. This is from 2017, Meredith James's artwork. And you know, I'm glad we've worked together on these elements as well to try and figure out how to balance the different kinds of use and add creative things like this while also allowing room for all kinds of visitors and all kinds of use. And then, you know, completing the boxwood beds in 2018 with the Carolyn Lynch Garden, and adding the furniture and the umbrellas and having the fundraising succeed with the Lynches to allow these gardens so that they don't just look good for a year or 5 years, that they have the funding to assure their care in perpetuity. You know, all of these things, these were great parks to begin with, and it's nice to start with a great design and be able to just take it up a notch. I mentioned my kids early on. This is them when they were younger, enjoying the fountains, and it's been really a pleasure to enjoy the parks with my family in the community and experience not just the Greenway, but come to the North End for dinner and for pastries, and then come back to the park to enjoy the pastries. And I have loved it. And while I grew up in New York and, you know, going to the Statue of Liberty, Ellis Island Foundation is a bit of a homecoming for me. For my kids, I'm dragging them away from the community they know, which is here in Boston. And they will have many happy memories of days and evenings like this. So thank you all for working with us. And I'm excited for what the next executive director will do with you. That we expect that search to conclude kind of this month or early next month. And so there'll be a new executive director to come and talk to you in probably May or June. So happy to take any questions, and thank you for many years of working together.
Oh, thank you very much, Jesse. We wish you all the best. We have time for a couple of quick questions if anyone has one. Do not see anything in the chat. Nope. I think we wish you the best. We're very excited for you, and keep us updated on your new adventure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. All the best to you, Jess.
Thank you, Cheryl.
That's great. All right. I'm going to turn this over to Dave Kubiak. Dave, I just unmuted you. And we're going to do some ZLC work.
Starting with the ZLC meeting in Giacomo's.
You can start with that, or you can talk about the BPDA last night.
Well, I think to be fair to the applicant, we should start with Giacomo's, and also to be fair with some of the people attending this meeting tonight. I want to quickly review what we learned at the meeting, the zoning and licensing meeting that was held on February 23. This is Giacomo's Ristorante, which is at the corner of Hanover Street and Fleet Street. Richard Travaglioni bought the restaurant, I believe, about a year ago. He also owns the building, which includes restaurant use in the basement, restaurant dining on the first floor, and limited storage use on the second floor. Above that, there are residential apartments. I think there's 3 residential apartments, but the building is owned by the same owner of the restaurant. The zoning code violation is restaurant on second floor forbidden. And the owner is seeking a variance from this requirement. There is also a building code violation regarding ADA access. The number of dining seats will nearly double from 28 on the first floor to 48, including the 20 proposed on the second floor. Key issues raised at the ZLC meeting: increase in oil, grease, and trash that are regularly deposited in barrels in the alley behind the restaurant. The alley is shared by 3 other restaurants. Care of the alley and handling of the barrels is one subject of an intended agreement between Giacomo's owner and a resident owner who abuts the alley. Privacy concerns were also raised by the abutter and may be addressed in the agreement. Secondary emergency egress will be by way of a rear door on the second floor onto a fire escape. Questions were asked about the capacity of the fire escape to accommodate 20 or more people, inspection of the fire escape, and means to get from the fire escape to a safe location. And the last is a question was raised about storage capacity since the second floor has been used for storage. And apparently there is ample storage in the basement that will be used. The owner and his attorney were asked to provide an executed abutter agreement or the terms of a proposed agreement acceptable to both parties. So we have some assurance that the abutters' concerns will be addressed. And the last thing I have here is and this is also very important, the owner will apply for an alcohol license amendment if and when the zoning appeal is granted in order to expand alcohol service into the second floor. The owner has asked that NEWRA include the prospective license application in the discussion and vote tonight. And the owner did submit a draft license amendment application. The draft application seeks alteration of licensed premises, specifically for service on the second floor. The application, and again, it's just a draft, the application does not seek change of license type or change of licensed hours. That's the report from ZLC.
So Ryan, I opened your mic, and Richard, I'm going to open yours now too.
Thanks, Cheryl.
You got it. Yeah, we can hear you. Okay. Richard, I'm trying to open your mic. You need to click. There you go. You got it.
Hi, how are you?
We
Good.
also have our architect with us, I believe, Anthony Pisani. I don't
Oh,
know if
okay, hold on. I'll open his mic too. Hold on. Anthony?
Anthony Pisani. I believe I saw him earlier. I see A Pisa as his name.
Oh, A Pisa. Okay. I would not have known that. Okay.
All right, thank you again. And hi, everybody. My name is Ryan Gosda from McDermott Quilty Miller, and I represent Richard Traveloni, who owns the property at 355 Hanover Street, as well as the restaurant Giacomo's. And Dave did a great job summarizing what we're here to talk about tonight. And Richie purchased the property, I believe, about 2 years ago, but the restaurant's been there for many more years, I believe over 20 years. But what we're looking to do now is to extend the restaurant use, the legal use that is restaurant, onto the second floor, which was previously just used for storage only. This will allow the ability to seat up to 20 additional guests on the second floor, as well as an area for food prep. There are no other operational changes proposed. The license will be remaining the same, as will the hours of operation. Because it requires variance relief, we will be going to the zoning board, as well as seeking relief for a building code violation, as Dave referenced. The building code violation is for ADA access. We have already gone before the Architectural Access Board and received variance relief. This is due to feasibility issues with getting an elevator up to the second floor. So that relief has already been granted. And as mentioned, once this is approved, hopefully, we will be going to the licensing board to amend the liquor license description. The liquor license description to allow the alcohol and food service on the second floor in the form that we're talking about here tonight. So it kind of goes hand in hand with one another. And with respect to issues that have been brought up with the abutters, we have executed an agreement with a direct abutter addressing all of her concerns with regard to trash removal and putting up a privacy screen in the back. With that, I think that addresses most things, but we're happy to answer any questions that other members of the community may have.
Perfect. All right. Anybody have a question? Put up your hand, put it in the chat. Dan Toscano. I'm opening your mic, Dan.
Thank you, Cheryl, and thank you, members of the association. Daniel Toscano, I'm here representing the abutter in the back, Sandra Queso. We have worked closely with McDermott Quilty Miller and Dennis Quilty and Ryan, executing, and Richard, of course, executing an agreement that helped with the screening. The screening was already put up by Richard, so thank you very much for working with us. We feel confident that Richard has been proactive in doing his best to keep that clean. We understand that he is not the only restaurant that uses the back of that property. There are 3 other restaurants. So I commend Richard. He's going to take the lead on trying to keep that as clean as possible. But we commend him on thank you for the screening. I know Sandra is on this. She'll also probably thank you as well. So we would have no opposition. We entered into the agreement with Richard. So that was done. And Richard agreed to everything that we had asked for. So thank you. And hopefully we can do our best, work with the other restaurants and just keep that as clean as possible. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone else want to speak? Put up your hand, put something in the chat. I'm watching. Dave, your mic should be open, Dave. Did it close? Sorry. Let's open you back up again. Okay.
Thank you, Cheryl. I had hoped not to have to bring this up because I had hoped that the owner and attorney would have explained tonight or responded tonight to the concerns that were raised about the fire escape. There could be as many as 25 people on that second floor that would have to escape a fire pretty quickly. There's one door at the back of that second floor that goes onto a fire escape. I asked a bunch of questions about the fire escape, including whether there was certainty that the fire escape had structural capacity to accommodate 25 people. Got no answer. I asked where the fire escape leads to. Is there a ladder to the ground? Apparently not. I was told that the fire escape leads to a window on an adjacent building. So who knows whether that window would be locked and available for escape. Another response I got during the meeting was that the fire escape is only 1 floor up. So apparently, I guess they think people can jump off the fire escape to the ground. And then I wondered whether the fire department routinely, or in this case, as part of the appeal, would review egress, emergency egress, and the structural capacity and movement capacity of the fire escape.
If I could just briefly respond, I don't know if Anthony might have more specific knowledge with respect to the location of the emergency access out of the rear on the 2nd floor. But with respect to the ability of people to leave or, fire issues, once we do have all this finalized and we do have to file the building permit for it to be approved, we will have to obtain an updated fire assembly permit. So that will have to be all up to code and up to their standards. So whatever the eventual updated capacity will be, if you will have to be according to their standards. So that won't be approved without that fulfilling their requirements.
And the screening that was mentioned to provide some privacy for the rear abutter, where will that screening be? Because I'm concerned that if that screening is on the fire escape, it's going to make it even more difficult for people to escape a fire.
I do believe it's already up. I haven't seen it. Richie, I don't know if you could speak to
Yes, it's actually only lattice, and it's strapped right to the top of the handrail. It would not be in the way of getting off the fire escape. If you go out the door, you actually follow the fire escape. It's only about 8 feet. And I guess the ideal thing that has been done down there for years is most fire escapes lead right to a window. But in this case, right next to the window on the other side of the rail is a roof over the back of the restaurant. That's actually just 1 story, and it leads down. I wouldn't say it would be able to be just jumped off of, but there is a way that you can make your way down without just a clear jump.
Dave, do you have a follow-up, or I can, Mary and Jen both have questions.
Tom Schiavone.
Yeah. Oh, Tom, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Thank you. From Snow Hill Street.
And then Jen.
Mine is more a general question for consideration, that what kind of precedent would this set for other first street level restaurants? How many others might use this for expansions? And we know that the city is, I believe, seriously considering resuming curbside out in Hanover Street. So there'll be an expansion. So conceivably restaurants would have additional spaces, not only upstairs, but out in the street level at curbside. And that would considerably increase the amount of people who are coming into the North End, the lines, and also just the volume of people if this were to set a precedent. So I'm just wondering, has that thought been considered? Thank you.
I can't really speak to policy of the city, but with respect to lines, I think it would be Richie's position that if anything at his establishment, this might help. I know that he sometimes has lines at his location because it's a well-known restaurant, and the ability to seat some more people upstairs where he can would kind of help to cut down on that and seat more people inside. And especially now, as we're in COVID and he has limited capacity as it stands now, it would of course help him operationally speaking to be able to seat people within social distancing inside to the extent that he can.
Do you have the figure on what kind of outside curbside seating, how many spaces initially during the COVID, but if the curve were to flatten, how many seats, tables would be outside in the summer or from April through October?
Richie, do you know? I don't know if you actually applied for a patio permit last season or if you will be this time. You might.
Yes, no, we did. I would believe somewhere on the line of about 20 to 25 of people. I know when the COVID started, we had to do the social distancing, And we did kind of reconstruct the front door entrance into Giacomo because it's a very small place, and to walk through or into the restaurant as of before COVID, you would actually have to walk right through the dining room and all the tables. So I kind of reconstructed it so if you were to walk in, or you'd be kind of, I actually lost a little bit of the seating on the first floor in doing such.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Jen?
Hi, just a quick question, and I guess you're kind of getting into the COVID stuff. I was wondering if this expansion was motivated by COVID and the need to socially distance and have less occupancy in the restaurant. And so like, if it weren't for COVID, would this have happened, or, were you kind of already planning it, or was this really driven by COVID? And once things get back to normal, hopefully, do you plan on keeping the higher volume going at the restaurant with seating?
Richie,
As far as, I kind of lost you there for a minute. I apologize. I don't know if anybody else did, but I lost the volume. It froze up a little bit. As far as the upstairs seating area, it had a lot to do with the change in COVID, because Giacomo's is a very small restaurant, and I just bought it and just getting used to it on how it operates and so on, and I'm very humbled by it. But again, I did lose some of the seating on the first floor between that and social distancing.
Yeah, so I was asking, was this motivated by social distancing? It sounds like yes, but when things get back to normal, you'd probably keep it going at the higher volume anyways. Is that the intention?
Hello?
can you hear you, Richie?
Yes, I'm sorry. I can't hear anything. I'm just talking. I just heard you now, but I didn't hear Jennifer. I apologize.
I'll write in the chat.
I believe it is the intention. She had asked if once COVID restrictions are over and social distancing is no longer required, if we would keep the additional 20 seats on the second floor. And I believe the answer is yes.
Well, the answer would be yes, because I believe it would be better than them lined on the sidewalk.
Right.
Okay, we have one question in the chat. How does one make their way down from the adjacent roof or through the second floor window where the fire escape ends?
Might be a Richie question. I've never seen the fire escape, so I can't
I don't-
unfortunately
I
answer.
don't
But
know.
again, I would reiterate just for the record here that the fire escapes and all the capacities would be up to code according to the fire department once this is approved. So it wouldn't be the case where we could just say on a wish and a prayer where you could escape. It would have to be something that would be up to code.
But the question is, how does one make their way down from the adjacent roof or through the second floor window where the fire escape ends? I can't visualize it, so.
I unfortunately can't answer. Are you still with us, Richie?
Yes, I'm here.
Did you hear me? Did you hear the question?
Yes, I believe when you go out the door, the fire escape is suspended, but as you follow it around to the side of the building and in the direction of the window, you would actually be able to step over the rail and go down to a lower roof and then just propel yourself down to the ground. I mean, yes, you would have to be able to do such, but
Okay, Dave, your mic is open.
Thanks. Just continuing the conversation about the amount of seating. Right now, I don't know whether, I know the governor's now allowing 100%, but tables are supposed to be 6 feet apart.
right.
Eventually, you hopefully will return, and other restaurants will return to 100%. There's also been proposals to make the outdoor seating, at least for half of the year or so, permanent, even after the pandemic. And I'm raising this issue, I guess, in a general way for the community to think about. In your case specifically, I think you mentioned 25 seats out on the street, sidewalk and street. So that could be, with the second floor, that could be over 70 seats, whereas the restaurant had 28 seats prior to COVID. I'm just identifying that as time goes on, we may see huge increases in the number of dining seats in this neighborhood. And what goes along with that are more crowds, more delivery trucks, more trash. Thanks.
Brett, I opened your mic.
All right, perfect. Thank you, Cheryl. And thank you, Association. I appreciate the time tonight. I know I had my piece on this issue last month, and I appreciate you guys letting me come here to speak tonight. But I do just want to make a point here that as of our meeting last month, we had discussions with the abutters between Dan and Sandra to discuss remedying some of the issues and concerns from Sandra. And just to show how good of a neighbor and how cooperative Richie's been throughout this process, between our meeting last month and this meeting tonight, how quick everything was resolved and how he's ready to address these issues. I think that as just speaking to his character as a neighbor and as a business owner in the North End, how much he's come into this neighborhood after taking over Giacomo's last year and is already trying to make efforts to improve the back parking lot, improve conditions in that area in general. I think that that's something that should just be recognized. And I completely respect that this is your meeting tonight. I just wanted to just voice that I appreciated the turnaround from Richie and how quick he was able to address these issues. And then to the point that there is, like, across the street, was 2 years ago, Asagio's built their second floor. And Hanover's not a predominantly residential area, especially in this area. So I just wanted to just put that on the record as well for your consideration.
Thank you. I have a question in the chat. Are there restrooms on the second floor?
Yes.
Terrific. Anybody have any other questions? Dave, do you want to do a motion? I'm going to open your mic again.
Well, I move that NEWRA members who have voting rights vote tonight by email to newra.board at, what is it, Cheryl?
NEWRA.board@gmail.com. I just put it in the chat.
That voting members vote tonight by way of newra.board@gmail.com, either in support or in opposition to this appeal.
I second it. Perfect. So please send in your votes tonight or first thing in the morning, and Richie and Ryan will get a note out to you in the morning.
Great. Thank
Okay.
you.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Next up is 96 Salem Street, DBA The Wild Duck. Dave, are you going to do that, or is Victor? I'm sorry, I just don't remember. Dave, you're muted again. Hold on. All right, Dave, I just unmuted you again.
There you go. And now that you went up to the trouble of unmuting me, I am deferring to Victor.
Victor, I'm unmuted. I was looking for Victor now too. I just unmuted you, Victor. All right, Victor.
Am I unmuted?
You certainly are.
Okay, we did not have a ZOC meeting, so this is a first look for everyone. So there's no ZOC report.
Do you want to talk about the request from the Wild Duck? Victor?
Well,
I think
there's not much for me to say until Attorney Moradian makes his presentation. Why don't we put it that way?
Okay, John, I'm going to open your mic. Hang on 1 second. There you go. You're all set.
Good evening. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Good evening. My name is Attorney John Moradian of the Marcus Law Offices. I represent Jamini Patel, who's formed Wild Duck 96 Salem Street Incorporated. And they're purchasing the packaged liquor store at 96 Salem Street. We've applied to the licensing board for a transfer of the license to the new ownership. We had a hearing last Wednesday, a week ago Wednesday, And we've asked that the License Commission hold a decision and Todd be able to meet with the neighborhood groups. I've met with the neighborhood council last Monday night, and the transfer was approved unanimously. Basically, it's just a change in ownership. There's no change to the licensed premises. We're not expanding the floor plan or anything like that. The closing hour will remain 11 p.m., which has been the way it's been in place currently. The Jiminy Patel is the manager of record owning the store. She's experienced in alcohol sales. She has alcohol safety certifications. The store does utilize an ID scanner to protect against underage sales. With that, I'll take any questions you may have regarding the request. So like I said, there's no change to physical structure. There's no change to the store name. It'll still be the Wild Duck, just a new ownership group.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions? Want to speak? Put your hand up. Put something in the chat. I'll open your mic. Let's see. No questions?
Well, I guess I could ask a question. Am I still open?
You are.
Okay. I also watched the Chinatown presentation, John, and as I recall, the person who will be manager of this Wild Duck is different from the person who would be manager of the Chinatown Wild Duck. Do I recall that accurately?
That is correct. The manager of the Chinatown Wild Duck will be Smitesh Patel, and he will not be managing the Salem Street location. Jiminy will. They're structured as two separate sales and two different groups. So there's no cross management between the two stores.
And it also came up, I think must have been at that meeting, yeah, that the family owns a liquor store in the North Station complex. And is there a different manager there?
Smitesh manages the North Station complex and will manage the Chinatown complex. Jiminy will manage only the North Station. I'm sorry, the Salem Street location.
Mm-hmm. And no changes are anticipated, planned, or being thought about by the purchaser at this point. Is that correct?
No, there's no change to the. I guess you're referencing like a physical expansion of the premises, stuff like that.
Well, hours.
Hours are going to remain the same, what they are permitted by law. So Monday through Saturday, that's 8 a.m. to 11. Sunday is 10 a.m. to 11, and that's what's permitted by the state, statute. There's no change to the physical structure. We're not expanding it in terms of trying to make it bigger or anything like that.
Okay, I don't have any further questions, Cheryl.
How would you like to handle this? Do you want to do it as a vote?
Well, sure, I can make the same motion that Dave made.
That'd be great.
For newer members to vote to support or oppose the proposed transfer of license from the seller to the buyer.
Okay, and I will second that. So if everyone, again, newra.board@gmail.com, send an email and we'll get you an answer in the morning.
Great. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you very much. Best of luck. Dave, I know Dave has a couple of things he wants to talk to us about. I am looking for you right now, Dave, to unmute you. Okay, you're unmuted.
Okay, the first thing I need to do is to amend the motion regarding Giacomo's. because I referred to it as an appeal, which is the case, but it's also a license amendment application as well. So I'm amending that motion to include a vote not only on the appeal to have dining on the second floor, but also to support or oppose the license amendment for alcohol use on that second floor. And I'm not sure whether those should be separate or the problem, I don't know. I personally am fine with it being the same vote, but others may disagree.
I've already gotten a bunch of votes.
Okay.
Oh, if Ryan Gazda is still on, do you have any hearing dates, licensing board or?
Ryan's gone. Ryan's gone.
Ryan's gone. Okay.
Yep. He's gone. Okay, so Dave, do you want to talk about BPDA? Dave.
Dave is gone.
Dave, I'm just unmuting you again.
Yeah, I don't know why I keep getting muted again.
I don't know, because I'm not doing it.
The system knows me well. Now, is the last issue the design and use standards for the downtown waterfront?
It is.
All righty. And this was not on the agenda, but there was a meeting last night put on by the Boston Planning and Development Agency in order to develop design and use standards for the downtown waterfront district that runs generally from Christopher Columbus Park or the hotel down to the Evelyn Moakley Bridge or the Hook Lobster site you might be more familiar with, from Atlantic Avenue to the water. So it's a fairly large stretch and a very, very important stretch of waterfront. The BPDA held a 5-year so-called public process to develop a municipal harbor plan for that area that in some respects substitutes for Chapter 91 regulations, or I should say that substitutes for certain Chapter 91 regulations along that stretch of waterfront. It was a 5-year process. The BPDA, even last night, referred to it as extensive public input. Well, I agree that there was extensive public input, but it was mostly ignored by the mayor, who directs the BPDA, and ignored by the BPDA itself and the BPDA board. Because that public process was not well run by the BPDA, and the Secretary of Environmental Affairs, in approving the MHP, the Municipal Harbor Plan, recognized deficiencies in that process. The Secretary directed the BPDA to develop these design and use standards. And those were to direct how projects in that stretch of the waterfront and how open space amenities and parks and other things would be developed. So it's very specific direction on the design of those elements of the waterfront. I'm going to quickly read something the Secretary wrote in the decision. The design and use standards will advance the city's public realm by 1, engaging in a public process to review its recommended actions and projects. That's the Municipal Harbor Plan's recommended actions and projects, and developing consensus on near, medium, and longer term priorities. And 2, developing standards, specifications, and guidelines for the following: designs, features, and amenities of new and existing open spaces, green space, landscaping, wayfinding and signage, and pedestrian connections to and from the greenway, And 3, identifying opportunities for increasing resilience to flooding and storm surcharges through the enhancement of areas of the harbor walk, open space, et cetera. So it's a pretty rigorous decision by the secretary in terms of what's expected from these design and use standards. And I keep emphasizing the word standards because the very first thing the BPDA did in this so-called new public process is change the word standards to guidelines. So they're referring now to design and use guidelines, and guidelines are just that. And to me, by changing the word from standards to guidelines, they're trying to move to BPDA discretion. They're giving themselves more discretion as to whether or not they're going to enforce these requirements, if there are in fact requirements. We were told last night that, oh, well, there aren't any real details. There aren't going to be any details. It's going to be more general guidance on how things should be implemented along the waterfront. Now, this is my take. I was only one person attending the meeting last night. I know that quite a few others attending the meeting tonight did attend the meeting last night. I heard from some of them, and they're as upset as I am as to this process. What concerns me is not only, what concerns me is that if last night is an example of how they're going to run the rest of the public process, it stinks, and we're not going to be heard. The public is not going to be heard just as much as they weren't heard during that 5-year process to develop the municipal harbor plan. The other problem is that I've heard that this public process and development of the standards is going to be extremely short. We were told several months ago it'll be a 6-month process. Even that is too short to develop the rigorous standards that are defined in the secretary's decision. 6 months is too short. I've heard from others that the BPDA intends the process to be much shorter than that. So the reason I'm raising this is that we are not, as always in the past, we are not going to get a responsive public process, transparent public process from the BPDA. I've been doing this stuff for 26 years and I've never seen the BPDA, or formerly the BRA, incorporate public input into their decisions. They hold the process. They note all the meetings that were held and all of those who attended, but then they ignore the public input and end up where they always wanted to be from the get-go. And where do they want to be? All of this, just like the municipal harbor plan, all of this has only one goal for the BPDA and the mayor of Boston, and that is to build a 600-foot building on the site of the harbor garage, and to build I forget how high it is, maybe it's a 400-foot building or so at the harbor, at the Hook Lobster site. It's only those development projects that are driving the BPDA to do the municipal harbor plan in the first place and to do this standards or guidelines development. So I guess my only thought in terms of how we can kind of counter the BPDA moves on this is to send a letter to the director of the BPDA, copying the Secretary of Environmental Affairs and raising these concerns that the public process is already shown to be inadequate once again. I hope others will speak to how they feel about the meeting last night.
Thank you, Dave. Is there anybody else that would like to speak about this meeting? I don't know who was there. Actually, no, I see a couple of names on here. I think that might have been there. Does anybody want to talk about writing a letter?
Am I still unmuted?
You are unmuted. And Tom McShane, it looks like you put your hand up too, but go ahead, Victor, and then I'll.
Well, mine is brief. I agree with what David has said, and I will support moving in the direction that he that he suggests, and perhaps a letter from NEWRA.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Tom McShane.
Thank you, Cheryl, and thank you, David and Victor. So I'm Tom McShane, and I do work with the aquarium and have been working on the Pinnacle project in the downtown waterfront. I offered my apologies to both David and Victor and Cheryl last night after that meeting because I had asked them if they were going to attend. And in my 40 years in public service, it was literally the most disappointing public engagement process I have ever seen. David was kind because he talked about the secretary's decision back in 2018 and what the secretary at Environmental Affairs said in his decision, and at the time it was Secretary Beaton. He specifically chastised the Boston PPDA and said that the public engagement process was woefully inadequate. And that's why he talked about not only the need for the city to do these design and use standards, but he encouraged the BPDA to come up with a meaningful public and robust public engagement process. We've been waiting for that for years. I think that the reaction that everybody had when the BPDA came out with guidelines versus standards, we all thought, well, maybe it's just a semantic issue. It was clear last night that that was not. They stated specifically that this would lead to a set of guidelines, but that it would have no impact on any particular project during the permitting process. So it's very clear that they intended guidelines. The Secretary of Environmental Affairs back in 2018, who approved this and made that requirement, was reinforced by the current secretary when she made the most recent MEPA decision and again called for a robust public engagement process. A couple of things that was the worst last night is we got 130 people who went to that meeting last night. It was exciting. I mean, you guys spent so much time and energy doing these Zoom calls. We had 130 people and they literally didn't allow any public comment. So you went through the whole process. You listened to what their consultant said, you listened to what the BPDA said, and literally none of us, the 130 who attended, could object, could ask a question, could raise our hand, could be heard. We couldn't hear what anyone else wanted to say. And it was really disappointing because there was such a great, vibrant mix of people who wanted to talk about this after years of being ignored, and we were prohibited by the BPDA from doing so. The second thing is that they limited the geographical scope so that their planning process that they're including isn't even going to include the Greenway. It is only on the water side of Atlantic Ave. It excludes the North End, it excludes Christopher Columbus Park, and it excludes the Greenway itself. So the very beginning of this, to not have any public comment, but to also have an excluded geographical area was crazy. I mean, you can't talk about how to enliven the waterfront if you can't talk about the Greenway and the North End and Christopher Columbus Park. They made it very clear at the beginning what they would not do. They will not relook at the goals that were set in 2014, 2016. Well, 7 years ago was a long time ago. What we've learned in terms from COVID and from the flooding that has occurred since then is that resiliency and equitable access and inclusiveness, all of those things have to be ignored because they stated up front we're not relooking at the goals. Those are things we didn't know about even 7 years ago. They told us that they would not look at a climate resiliency plan for the district. They're not going to include climate resiliency. We've had major floods in 2018, 2019 that have put this district underwater, and yet the design and use standards and plan for the waterfront won't look at what the district resiliency plan should be. There was zero opportunity to question them, to object to that. And then they made it clear, and David mentioned, if this is what's going to continue, they made it clear that the entire process, they will have 2 more of these meetings that won't take public comment, and they will wrap it all up in a month and a half. So the 6 months was cut down to 3 months. It's now gone down to 1.5 months. There is no process, and this is what they're going back with as their robust public engagement process. Lastly, they also instructed us that in our thought process as we go through this, we should assume that both the Shafaro Tower and the Hook Lobster site will be built. So that we're starting off with an assumption that those will be built. As I sat here and listened to your discussion with Commissioner Irish, and I heard people and saying, no public comment, that you can't be heard, that decisions are made before it even starts, that you exclude issues to look at. It's the exact same thing that's going on here, and it's just sad. And that's why I had to call and apologize that I even asked people to waste their time last night. So I just want to make sure that people knew how badly I felt that we had asked you to come to that last night. I think this idea of writing a letter that includes a letter to the secretary, I think is a great idea, because what I'm afraid most of is that we're going to go through the same thing that we went through with the municipal harbor plan. What the state has said to us and what the mayor has said to us is, well, why didn't you raise those concerns before? We didn't hear from you before, so we assumed that you were okay. We assumed you were going along with this. We assumed the community liked this. And I think the idea of very quickly getting back and saying, hey, if this is what you're going to do, we're not accepting that this is a robust public engagement process, and make it clear to them right from the start. So thank you. My apologies for going on.
Well, I mean, I got your flyer.
Oh,
St. Boston's waterfront.
Well, unfortunately, we thought it was going to be a great process. We were really excited. We thought this was going to be a great opportunity for everybody. And I think the public showed up and they thought it was going to be a great opportunity. And unfortunately, it looks like it's not.
Well, if you have something that you want to send to us, we can send it out to our membership. Some information about sending a letter, how to do it, what, some talking points, or, kind of a summary of what happened. I mean, you can work on it with Dave and Victor, and we can do that.
That'd
And
be
try to get the community involved.
I think because if you're talking to the representative or you're talking to the counselor, it's going to mean a lot more that you're talking to them and saying these things than we, obviously.
Yeah, I think we need to. Dave, I just unmuted you. I'm assuming we're drafting you to write this letter.
Well, yeah, and I just want to point out that the letter isn't going to oppose or support anything, like oppose or support the Geofaro project at the Harbor Garage or the Hook Lobster. All we're doing in this letter is raising concerns about the public process.
Yeah.
So I hope we can move forward. NEWRA can move forward to draft that letter. I'm not sure we have time to share that letter with our members at the next meeting. The next meeting is, well, our next meeting, which is April 6th, I believe, April 8th.
Or April 8th.
Yeah, well, that's a month away. And if Tom heard right, that it's a 1.5 month public process, we got to get out ahead of this.
Yeah, we do. We have to do it quickly.
The letter has to go right away. And the letter should go to the director of the BPDA, who's responsible for this public process, and the secretary who directed the robust public process.
What about CLF, Boston Harbor Now, the environmental
Well, we
group?
can see a lot
Are
of
they there? I mean, Tom, how do they feel about this? I don't know if you've had any conversations or if you have anything you could share, but I'm wondering about how other groups feel about this as well. Plus, Harborfront Neighborhood Alliance, Sarah is on here tonight, Wharf District, Newnick. There's a lot of people down here. Fort Point. Let's get them all involved. Oh, wait a minute, Tom, I got to unmute you. I don't know why you guys keep getting muted. Sorry. All right, open your mic.
Cheryl's been dying to mute me for so many years.
No way.
Obviously the meeting was just last night, so I haven't had a chance to talk to a lot of those groups. I have talked to some of them. I talked to some of the people from Boston Harbor Now who were at the meeting. There was you couldn't have walked away from last night's meeting and not been disappointed. And so it was kind of almost a joke that this one, that everybody said this was an incredibly disappointing opportunity. As I say, I think people were really psyched and beginning to think about what could the waterfront be.
Yeah.
And so it was really disappointing on that level. Unfortunately, I think that David's absolutely right. We are not looking at this as an opportunity to say yay, nay, pro or con on Shafaro or Hook or any particular project. It's the opportunity for the community, as the city council has been calling for, in terms of equity planning. The whole pitch has been from the city council. Let the public, particularly on public land, and this is all public land, this is the rules for Chapter 91, which is public land. Shafaro doesn't own the land, Hook doesn't own the land. It's the citizens that own the land under state law. And the equity planning idea is let the public say what they want and need there and let the developers fit in around it, rather than having the developers say what they want and need and the public just squeezes out what's left. And so that's why we're pretty excited about this process, and it was disappointing.
So we can talk more offline, but I see Michael Benetti is on the call still. Michael will probably be reaching out to you to speak with the counselor. I know that other counselors are going to be, Ed Flynn, Michelle Wu, Karen Foley's already hung up from Anissa Asabi George's office, the new acting mayor. I mean, we need to get on top of this and talk about the process. Like you said, it goes back to what we just talked about with the ZBA. We live here. We should have a voice. So we will help. And
thank you.
You should talk to Wharf District.
I need to talk to, the others. I should reach out to Boston Harbor now formally and the district council, et cetera.
Yeah, Wharf District, Suzanne and Mark, definitely.
Thank you.
They're all over State Street. I mean, I helped them on a meeting this week. They asked me to a meeting with some of the folks there because they want to turn State Street into one lane. I mean, I think we talked about that. We sent something out to all the membership a while ago. That is still moving forward, and Wharf District is really pushing with the business owners on State Street. They don't know where they're going to get deliveries or where anybody's going to get dropped off. Anyway, it's getting late. If you get us something, we will absolutely send something out to our membership, and we'll get a letter going, and I'm sure we'll be talking in the next few days.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Oh, wait a minute. I see one hand is up. Sarah, hold on. Sarah McCammon. Sarah, I opened your mic. Sarah.
Sorry, it took a minute to register on my side. Hi, I just wanted to say briefly that I've just had a very short email exchange with Boston Harbor Now. The feeling I got that they weren't pleased with the meeting either. I don't believe that CLF was there last night, but I will reach out to them as well to see if someone was there and get their thoughts.
That's great. Yeah, we should all work together on this. And Tom, since you're muted, you can be the point person. I just unmuted you.
I thought Dave was the point person.
All right, I'll unmute Dave now too. Dave, are you well, whoever's muted.
Good night, everyone.
All right, everyone. Thank you so much. We'll be in touch, and we'll see you next month on the 8th of April. Take care.